All
We
right.
are now recording.
Fantastic. So let's see what Ren, our fabulous narrative lead, has got for us today. My understanding is that she will be walking us through a little bit of Yarnspinner, the program we are currently using to organize the messy, messy threads of a Monster Hearts uh, whole narrative into a format that will continue to work.
Absolutely. So this is Yarnspinner.
Hmm,
It is available as a sort of free one that you can try. It's also available as a download. We love to support other indie companies, so we plan to pay for the paid version. We're just waiting to figure out how to do that because it's Unity focused right now. So we don't want to download the Unity plugin because we're
of
using
course.
Godot.
Yeah.
So this is Yarnspinner in its most basic form. You can declare different variables. So by the time this game is done, we're going to have a variable list that's probably as long as this document is right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like conversations have a lot of variables at play.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, we've just got very, very basic things, which is our four moves. So turn them on, shut them down, lash out physically, and stare into the abyss.
Mm,
And then we've also got Ping's relationship track. So every character
okay.
has a relationship track from positive to negative, and sometimes that's from liking you to hating you, sometimes that's from being apathetic towards you to caring about you, sometimes that's from enemy to frenemy. So with Ping, we've got this short little scene, we establish the scene, and then we have choices. So every time you have a choice, you create a little branch here, you write out what the choice is, and then you define where the choices lead you. So if I run this one, you can see over here on this side, we see the text that we've written, and then we see the three choices available to us.
Okay.
I get this out of the way. There we go.
Okay, so it's sort of a way of using code to create conversation trees.
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the things that's nice about Yarnspinner is that it's a little bit less code heavy than some of the other options. A lot of them are designed for people who have programmed before, and that's not something that I've done. So it's nice to have it in a sort of straightforward conversational interface.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's quite a lot you can get in here.
mm-hmm.
Is it that okay? Just I guess right off the top, why Yarn Spinner as opposed to other options?
Yeah, so
You've mentioned indie, you've
mm-hmm.
mentioned a little less code heavy, but what is it about that it appeals to you? I mean, you're going to be the one using it, so this
Yeah,
is the tool that you have chosen
it
to approach the
is, and I
situation.
will show you why by jumping
Ooh.
into Visual Studio Code.
Mm,
So Visual Studio Code programmers will be familiar with. It's
mhm.
I don't know very much about it because I am not a programmer, but I know it has lots and lots of things that you can do. But what I like about it is that it has a yarn spinner integration where
Mm,
you can create a visual version of your file. So
okay.
we're going to go to this file and we're going to how do I do this? Here we go. We're going to right click on it. We're going to open it with Yarnspinner. So that here you can see the entire scene written out as notes. So this
Okay.
was why we made the switch from the other programs that we're using to Yarnspinner because I really wanted to be able to see what all of our choices are.
Okay, so it represents sort of the flow of the conversation visually, which obviously makes it a little easier to track than I love coding. I love seeing it all come out, but it can be awfully difficult to tell exactly which order everything is needed to be at a
Exactly.
glance. And when you're writing and rewriting things, I can imagine it's helpful to be able to just say, hey, this needs an adjustment rather than where did I put that?
Yeah, and especially from a narrative design point, it's really, really helpful to see what the flow looks like. So, for instance, I wanted to make sure that we weren't starting off with any contested actions leading directly to other contested actions. I always want there to be a little bit of flow in between. So, by looking at this, I can go. So these green, orange, and red, that's a contested action. So there's a
Mhm.
success, a partial success, or a failure for each of those
Okay.
actions. The ones that are just one alone are uncontested actions. And the purple ones are ones that lead into contested actions. So
Okay.
purple is kind of our anchor point. So as you can see, these contested actions lead directly into another set of contested actions. And I was like, no, I don't want that. I want to add more purple ones in between. So this one is
Okay.
missing its purple one, and this one is missing its purple one. So I'm in the process of rewriting that scene to make sure that those exist.
So something I'm seeing here is that you have certain connections that are being made. I assume that is to represent, hey, the success, whether partial or complete, will lead to here. But I assume that there's different things you would get from, say, the full success was going to have more benefits than the partial, but it still
Yes.
sort of leads the conversation along a similar path.
Absolutely. And usually those benefits you'll see if we click on any of these, double click, it jumps to that point in the script so we can find it really easily, which is really nice.
Okay.
So you can see with the full success for this one, you discover information right away, whereas with the partial success, you're going to discover information later on, but there will be a time you have to wait. And then with the
Hmm.
failure, you don't get that information, but you can still move
Okay.
on to the next stage where you're trying to get the next piece of information, essentially.
I see. And it might jump you ahead a little bit on a failure because obviously you're not getting that juicy midpoint of, hey, here's some info for you, and here's movement on. I assume failures often have movement on their relationship track, just
Yes.
not in the happiest direction.
Very much so. And also sometimes the choices within. So, like, this is an uncontested choice here. And you can see that this one gives you information. So you now know that Gene is in the park. This one, your relationship track goes down,
Mm.
but you still learn that Gene is in the park. And this one,
Okay.
your relationship track also goes down.
Yeah, so it sort of represents that you are not necessarily going. You'll probably get that information, but how you get it does matter. If you fished with dynamite, yeah, you'll get the information, but there's a lot fewer fish for later.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
so you are sort of balancing a certain amount of knowing these characters, knowing them being messy. They will have different responses to different things. They will have
Yes.
different benefits from different approaches. No person just responds immediately perfectly to the nice option all the time or the angry option all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. So we want to make sure that one failure doesn't completely destroy the scene. That if you
Mm-hmm.
happen to have one bad pull, it doesn't mean that you are completely cut out of learning what you need to learn from Ping, that there are
Mm-hmm.
other options. But we also want failures to be meaningful. So there
Mm-hmm.
will be times where if you fail, say twice in a row, the scene is over and you just don't get that piece of information. Or potentially, if you fail a bunch of times, your relationship track with Ping goes down. So then next time around, when you're dealing with him, your options will be different because your relationship
Mm-hmm.
track will be in a different place.
Oh, I see. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. It gives a certain weight to those conversations, but also
Mm-hmm.
again, it delights in the fact that sometimes the character is just poorly posited to deal with the NPC they're dealing with.
Yes.
If you put all your points in kindness and they need tough love, you're not going to get a whole heck of a lot out of them.
Absolutely, yeah. And that'll be something that you as a player get to decide. So for this first choice, for instance, you have the decision about whether you want to use charm to turn them on and engage with Ping, whether you want to shut them down, or whether you want to stare into the abyss and get more information. And you'll have a sense of which of those moves your deck is built for. So you'll
Mm-hmm.
know that shutting them down you'll be better at, but you might get more information out of turning them on. So you'll have a decision about, do you want to take the riskier path and get more out of them, or do you want to take the sure path but know that it's going to be a confrontational conversation instead of a better positive conversation.
Yeah, of course. People aren't one thing, and they might be less skilled at something, but sometimes it's the right path, and that's the one you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have to try for.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, that plays in well to sort of the messiness, and you said at one point that trying to make every character into sort of the main character of their own story
Mm-hmm.
helps with that because you have that sense of actually dealing with a person who is interested as opposed to just a series of choices.
Yes.
Yeah, I assume the relationship track will probably have quite a bit of influence on that as time goes on.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, and I imagine that also sort of creates a sense of you do need to you can't just sort of burn all your social currency right off the bat. You are much like people who are actually in high school. you do need to see those people tomorrow.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
if you've been a real heel today, things might not go over so
Exactly.
great for you.
Yeah, so you might have the opportunity to bully through and push Ping into doing what you want, but is that what you want going forward?
Hmm.
And it might be. Maybe you're going to play a character who, bullies and shoves their way through things, and it's might be the path that you choose to take. And you get to play multiple times, so you can try different ways, right? You can play with someone who really likes to use hot, or someone who much prefers to use cold in your next time around.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of room for different approaches,
Yes.
and that reasonably speaking, it would be very difficult to get a full success on every single uh, possible interaction. And frankly,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't seem as interesting as the occasional failure.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the things we love about the original Monster Hearts game is that it's not just failure and success; it's also partial success. So, oops,
Hmm.
I just changed the color of that, which I did not want to do. So you can see there's some tricks with playing around with these
Hmm.
systems. So yeah, we have these partial successes so that you can always sort of experience what that's like when you roll 7 in Monster Hearts and you're succeeding, but
Hmm.
you're giving something up in order to succeed.
Yeah, whereas a failure it might not even necessarily be a failure on your part, but something interesting will happen. And you
Yes.
may lose an opportunity, but that can itself be very narratively rich.
Absolutely. So one of the fun things about Yarnspinner is that it lets us play with the ways in which our actions connect. So, for instance, we've got one here, I think, which you can see is connected to staring into the abyss, but it's
Hmm.
also connected to the success of shutting them down.
Hmm.
So we can create these sort of very complex interweaving pathways where things split apart but also come back together, and where you can sort of get a path through here, or you can get a path going this way and this way and this way and kind of winding up in the same place, so that we can create a really naturalistic flow to the conversation and make sure that there are enough options available to the player that they feel like they're role playing, right? We don't want it to
Hmm.
just feel like a point and click or like a visual novel. We want to have that role playing feel, but we're not Baldur's Gate. We can't write, 800,000 words of different choices. So being able to branch and recombine is a really, really great way of giving you that sense of flow and that ability to kind of define the scene without having to write endless different
Hmm.
options. And one of the ways that we make that feel like it's not just flavor is by changing those relationship tracks as you go. So even if you end up, from card to card, if you jump from here to here or you jump from here to here, you're going to the same place theoretically on this graph, but you're going through such a different path with the NPCs that you're going to wind up with different cards in your hand and with different relationship tracks. So you can
Okay.
create that sense of change within the game without having to write,
Yeah, of
completely
course.
wide open dialogue.
It also gives you a bit more freedom in your, sort of speak, your build and how you want to approach
Yes.
the game in the sense that, look, you will probably reach this point, but you may get different benefits
Mm-hmm.
for playing to your strengths or even against them, and really getting that richness baked into the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of ways to sort of accomplish this goal, but there's even more ways to potentially accomplish a later goal by taking a certain path.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
and it doesn't just see it seemingly it doesn't just punish you for having one skill set over another. It will feel like you are consistent to your character as you are moving through these choices. You don't feel like you have to just play against type just because the game clearly wants you to do a thing.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think a player should ever be penalized for playing to their character and for making their character feel real in their eyes. So that's something that I think the partial successes really gives you, is that you can have those moments where you don't entirely succeed or knock it out of the park, but interesting things are still guaranteed to happen.
Okay, so here's the thing. Walk me through one of these dialogue choices. Any path, anything we want, but starting at the first on the left-hand side and reaching the end, I want to know what that sort of process looks like. You can pick
Yeah.
any of them. I want your take on it.
So in this scene, you are at school and you're approached by Ping, who is a sort of friend of a friend. So Victoria is the deceased person, depending on the background you choose. She might be your best friend, she might be your sister, she might be your ex. You can kind of define what your relationship to her was. So Ping shows up and is worried about his friend Jean because he hasn't seen her around. So right
Okay.
off the bat, you get to decide how you want to respond to this interaction. So by sort of opening the scene with a contested action, we set the tone that you are choosing for your character to engage in the scene with. So you can start by saying, that does sound weird. What wouldn't you want to talk to you about? You've been friends forever. And so that's a turn them on action or a hot action because you're being kind and you're kind of trying to get Ping to open up. You can shut them down. That sucks, but I don't see what it has to do with me. Which is, so you're not shutting the character down and stopping the conversation, but you're taking a sort of hostile tone and putting Ping on the defensive. Or you can say, oh yeah, Jean, I think I've heard about her. Whispers, rumors. You stare into the abyss and try to learn more for yourself. So depending on which one of these paths you take, the scene is going to split, and the way that you and Ping are interacting with each other is going to change. Ultimately, you're leading to the same point, which is that Ping wants you to do something for him, and you're going to decide whether it's worth it or not. Mm-hmm. But the way in which he asks for that, the the options that he gives you to do that will change based on this first contested choice.
Okay, so a lot of the contested choices, at least at the beginning of the scene, really are to set up not even necessarily just here's what I want to do, but rather here is sort of the character that I am playing, here is how I am approaching this, and that will affect how Ping responds. I'm certain he is going to have a very different response if you succeed, for example, at a hot check versus, I don't know, failing at a cold check.
Yes.
I think that obviously is going to have quite a bit of an impact on not only the end result, so to speak, but also whether Ping likes you and whether you are
Yes.
cultivating that relationship,
Exactly.
whether he surrenders that information, and any of those things along that path
Yep.
could be up for debate, and you sort of have to figure out: am I good at being a nice person, or
Mm-hmm.
should I be kind of a heel here and get the information more directly?
Yeah, exactly. Now you can see the way this program works. You create nodes. So every scene is a node. And the
Mm-hmm.
naming conventions that we have chosen are the NPC you're interacting with, the
Mm-hmm.
location on the map that you're in,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next line of dialogue or the previous line of dialogue that's leading into it.
Okay, so like a disambiguator.
Yeah, exactly. And you can name a node anything. Like example nodes are often, forest 1 p.m. If you're using a game that has a lot of like linear time, that's a good way to organize it. We may change the system right now. We're using 3 words, and I'm hoping that will be enough differentiation that we won't run into 2 nodes with the same name. But we'll see how it goes. We might end up changing that later on. One thing I haven't figured out with this system is how to jump to the scene I'm looking for. So, for instance, let's say we want to choose Turn Them On, and we're going to go with the success track. So we're jumping to Been Friends Forever. There has to be a keyboard shortcut to do that. And if anyone watching this knows what it is, please tell me. Because did I do it? I did it, but it opened it in a new window. Interesting.
Partial success.
So as you can see, a lot of this is like playing around and learning things. So now we jump here to Turn Them On success. So Ping responds to that and says, I don't know what's going on with Jean. That's the problem. And I know you want me to tell you about Victoria, the murdered girl. So if you go investigate this, I'll tell you what's going on with me and Victoria. So now you have the choice of whether you want to help, but you want to get something out of it, whether you're going to help and not ask for anything, or whether you don't really want to engage with this plot line and you're just going to walk away.
Out of curiosity, how often is that an option? Like, I know obviously we're fairly early in the ideation process, but how often is just the legitimate option to, I am not going to engage with you in particular? Is that something that is is likely to show up a lot, or is that something that is more for early interactions?
I tend to like giving people outs. I think that's part of my writing style, that I really like never feeling like you're railroaded. So if you
Mm,
start a conversation, you're like, "Oh, Gene wants me to go and Ping wants me to go and talk to Gene. I don't want to do that." I never want the game to be like, "Are you sure?" But actually, could you? But like, are you gonna? But that's the plot I want you to follow, right? If it's not the plot you want to follow, you don't have to. You can say bye bye, and you can ignore it completely, and you can ignore it for this entire playthrough if you want to. So I think, especially because there will be multiple playthroughs and there will be time loops, there will be times where you're like, "Oh, I don't want to engage with that plot because I've seen it already." So maybe you forgot when you chose to enter into the scene that you had already done it. So being able to just walk away, I think, is really important.
I think that's really important in a time loop because while it's wonderful to do things over again and experience a story from a new angle, there is probably a point where you've seen what that conversation will produce. You've seen where it's going. You may be investigating something that has nothing to do with this person, and you do have limited time.
Yeah,
By
exactly.
definition, you only have so many hours in your day before that loop kicks up, and
Mm-hmm.
then you'd better have gotten the information you were after.
Exactly.
I'm actually curious to see what people's first playthrough
Mm-hmm.
versus, say, their fifth will look like. Because I think that first playthrough, I would wager most people are probably going to answer most calls to action. And they might end up with very little information as a result of it by being
Mm-hmm.
pulled in a lot of different
Exactly. By
directions.
spreading too thin and missing out
Mhm.
on a thread that they're trying to follow. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is it's also a design choice in the sense of making sure that the player has, frankly, a way that they don't have to go collect 10 chickens
Yes,
this playthrough. We did that last week.
exactly.
Today we're gonna go. I don't know. We're gonna go to the spooky gold mine. It was silver mine. I think it's
Silver
silver
mine.
mine.
Yeah.
But it, I think that's actually a really interesting way to look at it. It keeps you from having to do the same plot lines over again, but it also gives you a reason to follow some of them more than once.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do this one, but this one, you might need to do this one to get that result that'll take you to this third place if
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to go through path A. I think that's really quite interesting.
Yeah. So let's assume for this playthrough that we're going to try and find out more information, because you can probably guess if you go and do it, then the scene is over. Now, I'm not going to create infinite mirrors and jump through that one. I'm going to do find and paste. So that's the other way I've been doing it, is just look for it, and here we go. So you ask Ping for more information before you're going to do anything. He says, no way. Now they don't trust you, but you got to get to give. So now you're into another contested action option. You can shut him down, or you can lash out physically. Now, in the role playing game, lash out physically is almost always an actual fight. Like you punch them in the face.
Mm.
For the purposes of the balance of the video game, I want to make sure that you can lash out physically in ways that aren't necessarily starting a fight. So in this case, you lash out physically by slamming your fist into the locker beside Ping and using physical intimidation to try and get him to give you what you want.
Okay.
Whereas with
It is this sort of a central challenge to something like this? Because in a tabletop variant, that sort of interpretation of it is very reasonable. That's something that's there. Whereas in a narrative structure like this, you sort of have to come up with that first. You have to think of a lot of scenarios in which lash out physically makes sense. Is that, do you find that to be a bit of a challenge, or do you find it sort of be an opportunity, or both, I suppose?
I think it's definitely both. I think that because this game is so interpersonal heavy and so much of it is conversations between people, lash out physically can be a difficult one to weave in naturally. And we really want to make sure there's that balance, that if you are playing a character who is prioritizing that stat, that you're not going to be penalized for that. Excuse me.
That makes a lot of sense because it's very easy to play a physically based character in a game about conversation. You brought up Baldur's Gate earlier. A friend of mine played a barbarian and was frequently disappointed at what he could not do in a conversation. By
Mm-hmm.
contrast, my partner played a bard, and it was shocking what they could do in a conversational sense.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that those physical characters still get a chance to be physical characters, even in a game primarily about conversation and
Yes.
relationship building, It's that's a real challenge, and it seems like this is a really solid way to approach
Thank you.
that question.
Yeah. So for this scene, do you want to shut them down or do you want to lash out physically?
You know what? Let's go down that path.
All
Let's play
right.
lash out physically. I don't know why we punched the locker per se, but it's been a weird day, and our friend, girlfriend, ex of whatever it happens to be during our origin creation is missing, and I'm a hormonal teenager. I hit a locker. Let's do that.
Exactly. So you're using that intimidation faction. Maybe you want to think twice before pissing me off. And we're going to do a partial success because I think that'll be interesting.
Ooh,
So,
that's much more interesting.
exactly. So for the partial success, Ping shrinks away from the display of violence, but he's not entirely cowed. So we want to have those clues to the player that you know that you haven't entirely succeeded. So those little hints about, like, you can, in the writing, you'll be able to tell whether this was a partial success or whether there was a success, as well as there will probably be an indicator somewhere in the UI.
Mhm. But it's good because it gives you that sense of, as much as anything, you also want to make sure that like a full success feels like a full success. You
Mm-hmm.
need to have that edge of you did a thing and it kind of worked,
Yes.
and that's good because it worked and we're going to keep moving.
Yeah.
But it didn't quite work the way you wanted it to.
Exactly. Excuse me. So in this partial success, he admits to you that the information he has is about his relationship with his girlfriend May and how that connects back to Victoria. But he's not going to tell you everything until you do what he wants you to.
You still sort of have that opportunity to answer the call to action that he's provided you. But at the same time, you gained that information by being consistent to a character trait.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, I don't know why I'm losing my voice. My
Uh,
allergies have been acting up.
because you live on the coast and it's allergy season.
It sure is. Welcome to beautiful Vancouver.
It is a stunning place full of pollen.
It sure is. So now that you kind of understand what the stakes are, it's time for your character to decide what cards on the table, what are you going to do? Are you going to go and check it out? Are you going to say no and walk away?
Okay, so
So,
this would be an uncontested choice, correct? This is one where you're sort of
exactly.
make a choice, but you don't have to do it through. You just have to make a decision.
Exactly.
Uh, and from what I can see, like you can see set relationship ping tracking
Mm-hmm.
plus, yeah, +1. So if you do it, that's a positive interaction. And I can see that you would obviously lose some if you say I am definitely not doing that.
Yep. And you can see you
Um,
end up in the same scene here and
mhm,
here. But with this choice, you don't get a positive, whereas with this choice, you do get a positive boost to that.
mhm.
And then, yeah, with this one, you
Now,
get a negative.
yeah. Now here's something I'm curious about. Will negative relationships shape possible outcomes that could be useful? Is it always good to gain more positive relationship, or is it possibly will different information come to light otherwise?
It's definitely not always good to maintain positive relationships with people. There will be times when having negative relationships with people helps you. So it will very much depend on what their track is and what you're trying to accomplish. So, for instance, there's a skin called the Mortal, and they have like a true love that they can influence and do a lot of things to. If you have too high of a relationship track with the Mortal, they might decide that you're their true love, and maybe that's not something you're interested in, and that could create complications
That
with other
sounds like a lot of
relationships.
pressure.
Yep.
Okay, that's really interesting. It's always it's generally games have a tendency of creating a relationship track that is just. I mean, I love Stardew Valley, I truly do.
Mm-hmm.
But there really is nothing between. Okay, we've met, and then now we're married. There
Yeah.
doesn't. There's not. There's very few interactions where it's like, okay, well, having a more negative characters are more interesting to me if they have consequences for not liking you
Yes.
that aren't just this person doesn't like you, but rather, okay, what their behaviors be to you based on that. So I think the mortal skin is a very interesting example of that because effectively you become, if your relationship track gets too high, you might become beholden to somebody
Yes.
that frankly is also a messy disaster teenager. So
Hmm.
that's an exciting and interesting prospect.
Yeah, for sure. And we have supernatural factions in this city. So if you get a relationship track quite high with someone, but they're in a faction that you're opposed to, they might start trying really heavily to recruit you, and you might have to do a lot of work to sort of evade that relationship and that interaction. So
Yeah, they're trying to sell you on a pyramid scheme. You've kind of got to stay out of that.
yeah, exactly. And like for a negative one that could end up being a good thing to you. So for instance, there's some of the relationship tracks are from like apathy to attraction. So if they were apathetic towards you, it would make it easier for you to accomplish things around them because they're not invested in you, or they won't notice you doing things potentially. So if you're trying to sort of sneak around someone who has a low relationship to you, that might actually be a good thing because they're not paying attention to you. So it might make it easier for you to lie, or easier for you to like hide things from them.
The nature of those social entanglements is quite. It is something that's being thought through from both a narrative and mechanical
Very
level.
much. Yeah.
Okay. That's extremely cool. I like the idea of that because again, it always seems strange that we only really seem to have a reputation in so many things that is from hate to love, and
Yes.
that's not always a bad thing. That can be a really great thing in games. But if you're trying to build something about complex social entanglements and forging bonds with people that are themselves flawed and non-perfect individuals, that's really interesting. The truth of the matter is, I'd be just as afraid if somebody was horrifyingly angry at me or obsessed.
Yeah.
I think those are both very scary possibilities, and
Absolutely.
I think that's a very narratively rich path to take when it comes to relationship tracks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
So let's take our last branch here. We'll jump to agreeing to go. So then Ping tells you she's at the skate park right now, and that leads you automatically to the end of the scene. Oops.
okay.
Which is you slamming your locker shut and heading out.
All right. So again, it kind of collapses back into that central variable of no matter what you did during this scene, you are eventually going to step away from that locker. But how you get
Exactly.
there and the journey you take both really matter from, again, both a narrative and mechanical perspective.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, you can see here that the ways in which you talk to Ping and the ways in which you change. So in this one, you slam the locker. In this one, you I think close the locker and walk away. But at the
Mm.
end of the day, yeah, you always steps echoing in the steps echoing in the quiet. You exit the school.
Okay. So the narrative tries its best to be consistent with the actions that have taken you to that point as well.
Very much so. Yeah.
The tone, like you were saying earlier, the tone is very much set through those early choices, and
Yes.
then the scene sort of flows outwards from that, and then eventually reaches sort of its end state, which is mechanical in its nature because you're leaving, you're leaving that room. But whether you slam the locker or you close it gently or just pause for a moment and think, all of those are things that will help with the characterization, really,
Yes.
of this
Exactly.
character you're playing.
Yeah. It
Truth
sets
is,
the
no one
scene.
completely understands the character they're playing.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. Thank you, Ren. This is really interesting stuff. I really want to show everybody when we're doing these kinds of videos that this is sort of how things get built. It's a combination of
Mm-hmm.
tech. It's a thought process being put to paper, so to speak. And I want our community to be able to see this is a thing we're doing. We're building it. We're building it for them because we love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Of course, I'm happy to. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'm always happy to talk about narrative design and what's going into this. And it's been great chatting with you.
Okay. I really appreciate this. If anyone is interested, we are often on the Discord, so please feel free to pop in and ask Ren many, many questions. She is a absolutely brilliant creator, and I'm sure we'll have tons of cool answers for you. So To the audience at home, thank you so much for watching this, and keep creating. Bye.